Fire alarm. Rodney was happiest when he sat in his comfy chair, the one that was in his living room. It was where the 50-year-old man could cuddle with his small dogs. The warmth they gave him was calming and relaxing. Every Friday, Rodney sat and reclined in his favorite chair and waited patiently, waiting as his pepperoni pizza cooked in the oven. The meaty smells of the pepperoni tantalized his senses. He gazed down at both miniature poodles as they shook their brown and white tails and bodies happily. He had always wondered if they felt the same about him. Did they enjoy Rodney's company as much as he enjoyed theirs? Rodney's salt and pepper gray mustache twitched from the aroma that came from the kitchen. The smell of American cheese often drew Rodney's dogs away, though. As he sat in his chair, he felt the soft material of the chair while running his hand across it. Rodney struggled to stay awake, despite the sudden sirens of fire trucks. His eyelids sank heavily like hand weights, pulling them down. Old Rodney suddenly awoke to the smell of his favorite pizza. Burned? The aroma of pepperoni and cheese wafted in his direction. Something seemed off. It didn't smell like it should have. He wondered if he should get up from his comfortable chair to inspect it. Rodney so enjoyed the soft feeling of his chair, and at times he worried that the seat would become glued to him, making it impossible to escape. What was he to do now? Is the pizza burnt? Rodney exclaimed. He worried that something had gone wrong. One of his dogs came prancing into the living room. Rodney stared at him. Wally, it was usually the happiest dog in the world. He wondered if Wally was bringing him word about the condition of the pizza. What is it, boy? Is the pizza burnt? Rodney asked strangely, as if he expected an answer. Wally trotted away happily, leaving Rodney questioning his next move. Chair, I need to get up and check my pizza, Rodney said in agony. The chair offered no response. Rodney frustratingly pushed on the arms of the chair, hoping for a way to escape its sheer comfort. Finally, after many attempts, he stood up and turned to his chair angrily. Why have you done this to me? He pleaded to the chair. This is not the time for him to wait for the chair's answer. He had to attend his pizza. Rodney dashed as quickly as his old frame could carry him into his kitchen. He closed his eyes tightly as though not wanting to behold the burned remnants of his favorite food. The ashy smell from the burnt crust reached his nose now. Rodney's face cringed at the foul aroma. He reached for the oven door cautiously and opened it. His worst fears had been realized. The pizza was covered in ashy pieces of crust that encircled the black-spotted cheese. Rodney frowned at the sight of his destroyed pizza. His precious meal was now a disaster. Wally and his fellow canine Remy trotted into the room, as if bringing the latest news. What is it, boys? He said gently. Remy barked loudly at him, speaking the news. Rodney scratched his head, confused. What's Remy trying to tell me? He thought. Remy dashed out of the kitchen. Rodney followed both dogs back into the living room. As the old gent entered the living room, something had changed. A new aroma had blown into the living room. But it wasn't pizza. Remy jumped onto the hassock and looked out the window. The dog squirmed uncomfortably. Something was happening out there. Rodney hustled over to the window to see what Remy had found. As he gazed outside the window, he saw what his pooch had detected. A fire was consuming the house across the street. Rodney wondered how long it had been burning and why he hadn't noticed it before. He rushed out the door, hoping he could do something. Were there people inside? He couldn't tell, but he knew he had to act fast. The old man gracefully shuffled out the door to observe the house. The house was burning steadily. "Why haven't the fire trucks been called?" questioned Rodney. He couldn't wait for an answer. He had to get to the house. The weary old man dashed across the street. As Rodney reached the house, the fire was still raging. "Hello? Is anyone there?" he desperately exclaimed. No response. Wearily, the aging man dashed into the burning house. Perhaps the people inside couldn't hear him, he thought. Rodney pushed hard against the front door. It appeared to be locked. He looked around, trying to find something to break down the door. He found a metal pole lying on the ground and began swinging the pole at the door, hoping to fracture it. Finally, the door splintered a bit, the aroma of chipped wood circulating in the air. Exhausted, Rodney dropped the pole, watching it roll away from him. The door was barely damaged. Rodney charged against it with his shoulder several times, until finally he gave way. Splinters of wood stuck into Rodney's clothes. He called out once more. "Is anyone there?" he shouted, trying not to breathe in the smoke. Still no response. To think, this aging man had only moments ago felt so sad about a burnt pizza. Now he could be saving a life. He hoped that going into this building would actually be worth it. Rodney didn't know if anyone was even in there, yet the urge to do something rattled inside his head. Rodney still didn't hear fire trucks in the distance. He pushed through the smoke while the scent of burning wood wafted into his nostrils. Maybe the person's unconscious and can't hear me, the old gentleman thought. But he had no time to consider that. He had to act now, with or without the fire department. Finally, he reached the kitchen. The main part of the fire had clearly started in here. "How ironic," Rodney exclaimed strangely. He stared down at the floor, saw through the clouds of smoke an old man lying on the floor, unconscious. The elder was splayed there, as if he had just recently collapsed from breathing in the fumes. He had white hair and many wrinkles on his arms. He was at least 20 years Rodney's senior. He bent down to lift the old man and immediately heard the sirens from earlier. Finally, he thought, people are coming to help. Rodney struggled to carry the elder, but now he was feeling the full effects of the fumes. He stroked his beard nervously, then hefted the unconscious man up onto his shoulders and strained to carry him from the burning building. Rodney tripped over something on the floor, masked by the increasingly billowing smoke. What was it? Was this it? No, he thought. We'll make it. Rodney coughed, breathing in the fumes. He was lying on the floor, just out of reach of the door. With exhaustion setting in, Rodney knew he had to get out. He crawled tirelessly, the still unconscious elder on his back. His progress was slow, but gradually he advanced across the floor. Rodney collapsed to the ground just outside the still burning house. Firefighters had finally arrived. Rodney smiled at them. He had likely saved a life. Exhausted, he collapsed again, lying next to the man he saved. Rodney's two small dogs had found a way across the street. Wally and Remy both started licking his head as if trying to comfort him. Meanwhile, the elder he had rescued finally regained his consciousness. He turned to Rodney. "Thank you for saving my life," the elder wheezed. The emergency workers carted the man off to the hospital, leaving Rodney alone with his dogs. He glanced at his furry friends happily. "Hey boys, how about we make another pizza and bring some to our new friend?" Rodney asked proudly. One of the dogs put its paws on his leg as if asking a question. "And yes, you can have some too," he added, smiling broadly. Rodney rose and guided his furry companions across the street to begin making the pizza he would not burn this time. The end.